El señor Cadena Relámpago Azul y el mismo. Bueno, el que tanto teme a todos.
Hollywood loves outlaw stories, but most westerns take creative liberties that turn history into mythology. These 10 films actually stick to documented events, real people, and stories that can be verified through historical records. These are the only 10 westerns based on true outlaw stories. Number 10. The True Story of Jesse James, 1957. Nicholas Ray directed this 20th Century Fox production that attempted to show the James Gang as products of their environment rather than born criminals. Robert Wagner plays Jesse, and Jeffrey Hunter plays Frank, his older brother. The film follows the James brothers from their Civil War experiences as Confederate guerrillas through their post-war transformation into bank and train robbers. Ray was working from historical records, court documents, and newspaper accounts, though the film takes liberties with chronology and motivations. What makes this version interesting is Ray's attempt to explain why the James brothers turned to crime. The film shows them as victims of Reconstruction policies that made it impossible for former Confederates to rebuild their lives legally. Their farm is threatened. They're harassed by Union authorities. Banks foreclose on their neighbors. Ray presents their robberies as quasi-political acts of resistance against Northern capitalism, which was how the James brothers justified their crimes to themselves and their supporters. The film's historical accuracy is mixed. The major robberies depicted actually happened. The dates and locations mostly match records, and the gang composition is correct. But Ray romanticizes their motivations and simplifies complex political situations. The real Jesse James was a complicated figure, part Robin Hood myth and part cold-blooded color. Ray leans heavily into the Robin Hood interpretation, showing Jesse as charming and principled, when historical accounts suggest he was paranoid and brutal. The production values are typical 50s Hollywood. Everything is clean and colorful. The outlaws wear nice clothes and have perfect teeth. The violence is sanitized, with people shot cleanly without blood or suffering. This was necessary for the production code, but it undermines the film's attempts at realism. Real outlaws were dirty, often injured, and the violence they committed was ugly and traumatic for victims. Ray's film can't show any of that. Critics at the time praised Wagner's performance and Ray's direction, but noted the historical liberties. The film made modest profits and was quickly forgotten, overshadowed by other Jesse James films. But it's worth watching for Ray's visual style and his attempt to place the James Gang within their historical context. The film acknowledges that these men were products of a specific time and place, shaped by Civil War trauma and Reconstruction politics. That historical consciousness, even if imperfectly executed, makes it more interesting than many Jesse James films that treat in him as a timeless rebel figure divorced from historical circumstances. Number 9. The Assassination of Jesse James by The Coward. Robert Ford, 2007. Andrew Dominik made the most historically accurate Jesse James film ever, obsessively researching every detail to recreate the final months of Jesse's life with documentary precision. The film is based on Ron Hansen's novel, which itself was based on extensive historical research. Hansen was on set consulting, ensuring dialogue matched documented quotes and events followed the historical record. The result is a Western that feels less like a movie and more like a window into the 1880s. Brad Pitt plays Jesse as paranoid, cruel, and slowly losing his mind. This isn't the romantic outlaw of dime novels. This is a man damaged by years of guerrilla warfare during the Civil War, who turned violence into his only way of relating to others. Casey Affleck plays Robert Ford, the weak, needy young man who idolized Jesse and then cold him for reward money and fleeting fame. Their relationship, documented through letters and testimony, was psychologically complex and deeply unhealthy. What sets this film apart is the attention to historical detail. The weapons are period correct down to specific models Jesse actually owned. The locations match historical photographs. The clothing was recreated from documented descriptions. Even the weather matches recorded conditions for those specific dates. Roger Deakins shot using natural light whenever possible, giving everything a documentary quality. When you watch The Assassination of Jesse James, you're seeing the 1880s as accurately as cinema can recreate it. The film also addresses how Jesse's legend was manufactured. After his death, dime novels and stage plays turned him into a folk hero. Robert Ford was branded a coward and traitor, though he'd simply killed a wanted criminal for legal reward money. The film shows this mythology being constructed in real time, with Ford touring in a stage play reenacting the assassination while audiences hiss at him. That examination of how the West was mythologized sets this film apart from traditional Westerns that accept those myths uncritically. The assassination itself is presented exactly as it happened. Jesse was adjusting a picture on the wall when Robert shot him in the back of the head. He fell, blood pooled, and died almost instantly. There was no dramatic confrontation, no final words. Just a sudden death in a rented house on a Monday morning. The film refuses to romanticize it, showing the killing as mundane and anticlimactic, which is what it actually was. The film bombed commercially, making only $15 million on a $30 million budget. The studio cut it from 240 minutes to 160, and even that version was considered too long and slow. Critics praised it, but audiences stayed away. The commitment to historical accuracy meant sacrificing the dramatic beats audiences expect. But for anyone interested in what the frontier actually looked like and who Jesse James actually was rather than what mythology claims, this is essential viewing and the most truthful Jesse James film ever made. Number 8. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, 1969.
Hey, that's me.
Close to $20,000.
You want Harvey to do your planning for you?
Yeah.
You want him to do your thinking for you?
George Roy Hill directed this buddy western about two real outlaws, Robert Leroy Parker, who called himself Butch Cassidy, and Harry Longabaugh, known as the Sundance Kid. William Goldman's screenplay was based on research into the Hole in the Wall gang and their eventual flight to South America. The basic facts are historically accurate. Cassidy and Sundance did rob trains and banks. They did flee to Bolivia. They probably died in a shootout with Bolivian police, though their bodies were never definitively identified. Paul Newman plays Butch as charming and inventive, the brains of the operation. Robert Redford plays Sundance as quiet and deadly, the muscle. Their friendship is the heart of the film, and while specific conversations are invented, the relationship itself was real. Historical accounts describe them as close friends who worked together for years, trusting each other completely. Catherine Ross plays Etta Place, Sundance's girlfriend, who actually did travel to South America with them before returning to the United States when things got dangerous. The film's most famous sequence, the Hole in the Wall gang preparing for a robbery, is based on real events. Cassidy's gang really did use the Hole in the Wall region of Wyoming as a hideout. The members depicted in the film, including Harvey Logan and the Tall Texan, were real outlaws. The train robberies shown actually happened, though the details are dramatized. The relentless pursuit by a mysterious posse is also historically accurate. Pinkerton detectives and a special railroad posse hunted them obsessively, making the American West too dangerous to operate in. What Goldman and Hill get right is the sense of men who've outlived their era. The film is set in 1903, when the frontier was closing. Automobiles and telegraphs were replacing horses in isolation. Banks were getting too sophisticated to rob easily. Cassidy and Sundance recognize they're becoming obsolete, which is why they flee to South America, hoping to find the frontier conditions that no longer exist in America. That theme of obsolescence is historically accurate. Many outlaws from the 1890s struggled to adapt to the 20th century. The film takes significant liberties with tone and dialogue. The real Butch Cassidy wasn't as funny or philosophical as Newman plays him. The real Sundance was reportedly more talkative than Redford's taciturn portrayal. And the Bolivia sequences are largely invented, since very little documentation exists about their time there. The famous ending, freezing on them charging into gunfire, is based on legend rather than confirmed fact. Their deaths remain disputed, with some claiming they survived and returned to America under assumed names. Despite the liberties, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid captures something true about these men in their era. They were real outlaws who became legends. and the film shows how that transition happens. It made over $100 million and won 4 Oscars. It remains one of the most beloved westerns ever made, proving that historical accuracy and entertainment aren't mutually exclusive when handled by talented filmmakers who respect their subject matter. Number 7. The Left-Handed Gun, 1958.
To kill. Not to kill him.
Arthur Penn made his directorial debut with this psychological study of Billy the Kid, based on a television play by Gore Vidal. Paul Newman plays Billy as an unstable, possibly brain-damaged young man, driven by revenge and incapable of controlling his violent impulses. The film draws from historical accounts of Billy's life, particularly his relationship with John Tunstall and his role in the Lincoln County War. While specific scenes are invented, the basic trajectory follows documented events. The film opens with Billy working for Tunstall, an English rancher. Their relationship was historically real and apparently significant to Billy. When Tunstall is murdered by rivals, Billy goes on a revenge-killing spree. The Lincoln County War was an actual conflict between rival factions fighting for economic control of the region. Billy sided with the Tunstall-McSween faction against the Murphy-Dolan group, which had backing from corrupt officials. The film simplifies the politics, but gets the basic conflict right. Penn's innovation was treating Billy as a psychological case study rather than a romantic outlaw. Newman plays him as emotionally unstable, possibly suffering from what we'd now recognize as attachment disorder and impulse control problems. He fixates on father figures, first Tunstall, then Pat Garrett. When those relationships inevitably disappoint him, he reacts with violence. This psychological interpretation isn't documented in historical records, but it's consistent with Billy's actions and the accounts of people who knew him, describing him as unpredictable and intense. The film depicts several real events. Billy's participation in the murder of Sheriff Brady actually happened on the street in Lincoln, New Mexico, though the details are debated. His escape from jail, killing 2 deputies, is historically documented and happened roughly as shown. His death at the hands of Pat Garrett in Pete Maxwell's bedroom is based on Garrett's own account, though historians debate whether Garrett's version was entirely truthful or self-serving justification. What The Left-Handed Gun gets wrong is tone and atmosphere. Penn films it like a method-acting showcase, with Newman doing intense internal work that feels more 1950s New York than 1880s New Mexico. The supporting cast is similarly theatrical. The film looks like it was shot on sound stages because it was, giving everything an artificial quality that undermines the historical setting. The real Billy the Kid lived in dusty, rough frontier towns. Penn's version looks like a stage play. The film flopped on release, making less than $1 million. Critics found it pretentious, and Newman miscast. The title is historically questionable too. While some accounts claim Billy was left-handed, photographs suggest he was right-handed, and the image was simply reversed. But despite its flaws, The Left-Handed Gun influenced how later films portrayed Billy. The idea of him as psychologically damaged rather than romantically rebellious became standard, informing portrayals in Young Guns and beyond. Penn's attempt to explain Billy, rather than just celebrate him, was ahead of its time, even if the execution was flawed. Number 6. Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid, 1973.
So how about you present me with this war, and I'll show you a lesson in death.
Sam Peckinpah made his most historically grounded Western, following the documented final months of Billy the Kid and the hunt by his former friend Pat Garrett. The film is based on extensive research into the Lincoln County War aftermath, and Garrett's own written account of tracking Billy. While Peckinpah takes liberties with dialogue and compresses timelines, the major events depicted actually happened, and the complex relationship between Garrett and Billy is historically documented. James Coburn plays Garrett as a man who sold out to the Santa Fe Ring, the group of wealthy businessmen and corrupt politicians who controlled New Mexico. That's historically accurate. The real Garrett was elected sheriff specifically to hunt down Billy and other outlaws threatening business interests. Chris Christopherson plays Billy as charming but doomed, aware that his era is ending. Historical accounts describe Billy as charismatic and well-liked despite being a wanted color. So, Christopherson's portrayal fits documented descriptions. The film depicts real locations and events. Fort Sumner, where Billy hid out, was a real place, and Pete Maxwell really did provide him shelter. The various Collings shown, including the murder of Deputy Ollinger, happened as depicted based on witness testimony. Garrett's pursuit followed documented routes through New Mexico territory. The final confrontation in Maxwell's bedroom follows Garrett's published account, though historians debate whether Garrett's version was entirely truthful or embellished to justify killing an unarmed man in the dark. What makes Peckinpah's film valuable historically is how it examines the economic forces driving frontier violence. The Santa Fe Ring wanted New Mexico safe for business, meaning outlaws had to be eliminated regardless of whether they had committed recent crimes. Billy represented the old frontier where men could live outside legal systems. His death marked the end of that possibility. Peckinpah shows this transition clearly, making the film about more than just two men. It's about the death of the frontier itself. The film's production was troubled. MGM hated Peckinpah's cut and rearranged it, releasing a version he disowned. That butchered theatrical cut still contains historical accuracy in its depiction of events, locations, and the political context. The restored version released decades later is even better, showing Peckinpah's full vision of the Lincoln County War's aftermath and what Billy's death meant for New Mexico's future. Critics were mixed on release and the film bombed commercially, but historians praised its attention to documented events and its depiction of the economic interests that actually controlled frontier justice. Pat Garrett really was a hired gun for wealthy men. Billy really was cold and murky circumstances that Garrett then justified through selective storytelling. Peckinpah's film captures that moral complexity better than any other Billy the Kid movie. Number 5. The Outlaw Josey Wales, 1976.
El señor Cadena Relámpago Azul y el mismo. Bueno, el que...
Clint Eastwood directed and starred in this film about Missouri bushwhackers during and after the Civil War. While Josey Wales himself is fictional, the film is based on Forrest Carter's novel, which drew from real events and real Confederate guerrillas who operated in Missouri. The historical context, the brutal border warfare between Kansas Jayhawkers and Missouri bushwhackers, is accurately depicted. The film shows how regular farmers were radicalized into guerrilla fighters by atrocities committed against their families. The opening sequence, where Josey's family is murdered by Jayhawkers, represents events that happened to countless Missouri families. The Kansas-Missouri border was one of the most violent theaters of the Civil War, with irregular forces on both sides committing massacres. William Quantrill and Bloody Bill Anderson, mentioned in the film, were real guerrilla leaders. Their tactics, ambushing Union soldiers and burning towns, are accurately shown. The film depicts bushwhackers as brutal and effective, which matches historical accounts. After the war, many Confederate guerrillas couldn't return to normal life. Some, like Josey, refused to surrender and became outlaws. The film shows this transition accurately. The amnesty offer Josey rejects was real. Union authorities wanted to reintegrate former Confederates quickly, but many guerrillas had committed acts they couldn't be pardoned for, or couldn't psychologically accept defeat. They drifted west, carrying their violence with them. The film's depiction of post-war Missouri is historically grounded. The state was devastated. Farms were burned, families were displaced, carpetbaggers and opportunists exploited the chaos. Former guerrillas were hunted by Union authorities and bounty hunters. This is the world Josey inhabits, and it's accurately rendered. The film doesn't romanticize the Confederacy or suggest the guerrillas were heroic. It shows them as damaged men who couldn't stop, fighting even after the war ended. What's less accurate is the redemption arc. Josey gradually builds a new family from outcasts and learns to live peacefully. That's a dramatic necessity rather than historical reality. Most real bushwhackers who refused surrender ended up dead or in prison. Very few successfully transitioned to peaceful lives. The film's hopeful ending is Eastwood's invention, suggesting cycles of violence can be broken if people choose to stop. That's thematically powerful, but historically questionable. The film also portrays Native Americans, particularly Chief Dan George's Cherokee character, with more respect than most Westerns. The Cherokee really were displaced during this period, and many did try to maintain dignity while adapting to circumstances. That historical consciousness elevates the film above simple revenge fantasy. Eastwood is showing how war destroys everyone it touches, regardless of which side they fought for. And that's a historically accurate message even if specific plot points are invented. The film made over $31 million and remains one of Eastwood's most beloved westerns. Its depiction of Missouri border warfare influenced how later films portrayed that conflict. The attention to historical context, showing why men like Josey became outlaws, makes it valuable despite the fictional protagonist. Number 4. The Long Riders, 1980.
I gotta get back to things. Ma needs money to help keep the farm going.
Walter Hill directed this revisionist take on the James Younger gang, casting real-life brothers to play outlaw brothers. The Keach brothers play Jesse and Frank James. The Carradine brothers play Cole and Jim Younger. The Quaid brothers and Guest brothers fill out the gang. This casting gimmick serves historical accuracy because the real gang was built on family bonds and blood relationships that created both loyalty and devastating internal conflict when things went wrong. The film follows the gang from their height through their disastrous Northfield, Minnesota raid in 1876. Hill worked from historical records, court testimony, and newspaper accounts to recreate events accurately. The robberies depicted actually happened at the locations shown. The gang composition is correct. The tensions between Jesse and the Youngers, documented in letters and testimony, drive the narrative. Hill isn't inventing drama. He's showing conflicts that actually destroyed America's most famous outlaw gang. What makes The Long Riders valuable historically is how it depicts the Northfield raid as a complete disaster rather than a heroic last stand. The real raid was catastrophic. The gang rode into town expecting an easy bank robbery. Instead, armed citizens opened fire from buildings. The outlaws panicked and started shooting wildly. 3 gang members were cold. The Younger brothers were captured and sentenced to life in prison. Only Jesse and Frank escaped, and their gang was effectively destroyed. Hill films the raid with his characteristic style, slow motion, violence, and squibs, but he never glorifies it. This is chaos, not choreography. People die on both sides. The gang is torn apart. Citizens fight back effectively because they're defending their community. The film shows that the James Younger gang succeeded through surprise and intimidation. And when they faced organized resistance, they failed completely. That's historically accurate and important for understanding why their outlaw careers ended. The film also depicts the aftermath honestly. The Younger brothers spent decades in prison. Bob Younger died there. Cole and Jim were eventually paroled, but never recovered their health or spirits. Jesse continued robbing with new gang members, but was eventually shot by Robert Ford. Frank surrendered and lived quietly until dying of old age. The film doesn't give them a dramatic ending because their real endings weren't dramatic. They were just sad, which is what happens to most outlaws who don't die young. Hill includes details that add authenticity. The gang wore linen dusters during robberies, which they actually did. They used specific weapons documented in records. The horses and saddles match period photographs. The small towns look appropriately rough and unfinished. These details matter because they create a world that feels lived in rather than a Hollywood backlot. When violence erupts in this realistic environment, it has weight and consequences. The film also examines the economic context that created the James Younger gang. They were former Confederate guerrillas who couldn't reintegrate after the war. Banks and railroads represented northern capitalism that had destroyed their world. Their robberies had political dimensions they explicitly articulated. The film shows this without justifying their violence. They were terrorists using economic targets to fight a war they had already lost. That complexity is historically accurate and makes the film more than a simple outlaw story. Critics praised The Long Riders, but audiences stayed away. It made only $15 million on a $10 million budget, barely breaking even. The brother casting confused some viewers who couldn't keep characters straight. Others found it too violent or too downbeat, but the film's reputation has grown significantly. It's now recognized as one of the most historically accurate and well-crafted westerns about documented outlaws, showing them as complicated men trapped by circumstances they helped create. Number 3. Wyatt Earp, 1994. Lawrence Kasdan directed this 3-hour epic attempting to show Wyatt Earp's entire life from childhood through his final years. Kevin Costner plays Earp across 4 decades, showing his evolution from frontier drifter to lawman to legend. The film is based on extensive historical research, drawing from multiple Earp biographies, court records, and newspaper accounts. Kasdan wanted to strip away mythology and show who Earp actually was, which meant including less flattering details most Westerns ignore. The film begins with Earp's childhood, showing how his father's rigid moral code shaped him. That's documented in family records. It follows his first marriage to Urilla Sutherland, who died of typhoid, devastating him. That tragedy is historically verified, and apparently influenced his emotional detachment for years afterward. The film shows his various jobs as buffalo hunter, railway worker, and gambler before he became a lawman. These career changes are documented, showing Earp drifted through frontier occupations before finding his calling in law enforcement. The Tombstone section, which most Earp films focus on exclusively, takes up only about an hour of this 3-hour film. Kasdan depicts the escalating tensions between the Earp brothers and the Cowboys faction that controlled Cochise County. The political and economic conflicts driving that confrontation are accurately shown. The Cowboys weren't just outlaws. They were an organized group with political connections who saw the Earps as threats to their control. The film shows this complexity rather than simplifying it into good versus evil. The OK Corral gunfight is depicted as close to documented accounts as any film has managed. It lasted about 30 seconds. It happened in a vacant lot, not a corral. The Earps and Doc Holliday were there to disarm the Cowboys, not murder them. Who shot first remains disputed, but the film presents one plausible version based on testimony. 3 cowboys died. Virgil and Morgan Earp were wounded. The film doesn't make it heroic or exciting. It's just chaotic violence that solved nothing and made everything worse. Critics gave Wyatt Earp mixed reviews, praising the historical detail, but questioning the 3-hour runtime and Costner's understated performance. The film bombed, making only $55 million on a $63 million budget. It was overshadowed by Tombstone, which came out 6 months earlier and told the same story more conventionally and successfully. But Wyatt Earp is the more historically accurate film, willing to show Earp as complicated and often unlikable, which the real man apparently was. For anyone interested in who Wyatt Earp actually was rather than the legend, this is essential viewing despite its commercial failure. Number 2, Tombstone, 1993.
The law around here is the Cowboys. There's 3 of them right over there.
George Cosmatos directed this more commercially successful version of the Wyatt Earp story, focusing specifically on the Tombstone period and the events leading to the OK Corral gunfight. While less comprehensive than Kasdan's version, Tombstone is still largely historically accurate in depicting the major events, even if it simplifies motivations and compresses timelines for dramatic effect. The film draws from multiple historical sources and consultant input to recreate the confrontation between the Earps and the Cowboys faction. Kurt Russell plays Wyatt Earp as a tired lawman trying to retire and make money in Tombstone's silver boom. That's historically accurate. The real Earp went to Tombstone for financial opportunity, not law enforcement. He bought mining claims and gambling concessions. His brothers Virgil and Morgan joined him, also seeking fortune. Val Kilmer plays Doc Holliday as dying from tuberculosis, but still dangerous, which matches documented accounts of Holliday's personality and condition in Tombstone. The film accurately depicts the political situation in Cochise County. The Cowboys were an organized group of ranchers and rustlers with political connections. They controlled county government through Sheriff Johnny Bean, who opposed the Earps. This wasn't a simple law versus outlaw situation. It was a power struggle between competing factions, both of which use violence and intimidation. The film shows this complexity, making Bean and the Cowboys more than cartoon villains. Tombstone was a massive hit, making over $56 million domestically on a $25 million budget. Critics were generally positive, praising the performances, especially Kilmer's Doc Holliday, and the action sequences. The film benefits from focusing on a specific period rather than trying to cover Earp's entire life. That narrower focus allows deeper exploration of the Tombstone conflict while maintaining historical grounding. For viewers wanting an entertaining Western based on real events without 3 hours of commitment, Tombstone delivers historical accuracy within a commercial framework. Number 1. The Great Northfield, Minnesota Raid, 1972. Philip Kaufman directed the most revisionist and historically accurate Jesse James film ever made, stripping away every romantic notion to show the gang as incompetent criminals whose famous raid was a complete disaster. The Great Northfield, Minnesota Raid is based on extensive research into the September 18th, 76 robbery attempt that destroyed the James Younger gang. Kaufman consulted historians, read court testimony from captured gang members, and studied newspaper accounts from Northfield to recreate events as accurately as possible. The film opens with the gang already in decline. They're arguing constantly, paranoid about informers, and Jesse, played by Robert Duvall, is increasingly unhinged. He reads dime novels about himself and believes his own mythology, convinced the gang is invincible because newspapers call them heroes. This portrait of Jesse as delusional and unstable is based on accounts from gang members who survived. The real Jesse apparently did believe his own press and surrounded himself with yes men who reinforced his inflated self-image. Kaufman shows the gang's preparation for Northfield as sloppy and overconfident. They didn't scout properly. They chose the target based on rumor rather than intelligence. They assumed a Minnesota town would be easy compared to Missouri banks they had robbed successfully. That arrogance is documented in testimony. The gang had succeeded so often they stopped taking precautions. Cole Younger later admitted they underestimated Northfield's citizens and paid for that mistake with death and decades in prison. The raid itself is depicted as close to documented events as any film has managed. The gang split into groups. 3 men entered the bank while others guarded outside. A citizen recognized them and raised the alarm. Armed townspeople grabbed rifles and started shooting from buildings. The gang panicked. They shot a bank teller who refused to open the safe. They fired wildly at citizens. The whole thing turned into chaos where nobody knew who was shooting at whom or why. Kaufman films the raid almost documentarily, using handheld cameras and natural sound. There's no dramatic music, just gunfire, screaming, confusion. People die on both sides. The gang is torn apart. 3 members are cold, including Clell Miller and Bill Chadwell. The younger brothers are wounded multiple times but captured alive. Only Jesse and Frank escape by literally riding through the shooting, depending on speed and luck rather than skill. The film makes clear they survived by accident, not heroism. The aftermath is shown in brutal detail. The captured youngers are displayed in jail like zoo animals, while tourists gawk and photographers take pictures. This actually happened. The youngers became spectacles, exhibited publicly before trial. They were convicted and sentenced to life in Stillwater Prison. Bob Younger died there of tuberculosis. Jim and Cole eventually got paroled, but were broken men who lived quietly until dying. The film shows their fate matter-of-factly, without sentiment or judgment. What makes the Great Northfield, Minnesota Raid historically valuable is Kaufman's refusal to romanticize anything. The gang weren't noble outlaws fighting corrupt banks. They were violent criminals who'd gotten lucky for years until their luck ran out. The citizens of Northfield weren't cowards. They were armed townspeople who fought back effectively when threatened. The raid wasn't a heroic last stand. It was a botched robbery that got most of the gang killed or imprisoned. But the Great Northfield, Minnesota Raid's reputation has grown significantly among historians and Western scholars. It's now recognized as the most accurate depiction of the James Younger gang ever filmed. Every major event happened as shown. The characterizations match documented accounts. The raid is recreated with almost forensic precision. For anyone interested in what actually happened in Northfield rather than romantic mythology, this is the definitive film, proof that historical accuracy can produce compelling drama if filmmakers have the courage to show outlaws as they really were, rather than how legends pretend. These 10 westerns prove that truth can be more compelling than fiction when filmmakers commit to historical accuracy. By showing real outlaws as complicated, humans shaped by specific circumstances rather than timeless rebel archetypes, they reveal how the West actually worked and why mythology doesn't serve history or understanding.